Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. Welcome to Brain Club. So, tonight we will be continuing our conversation about transformation, and yeah, we transformed workplaces last week. We're transforming communities this week. We've been spending this series looking at transformation from several different angles. So we'll continue on. So before we do so, closed captioning is enabled. You just have to toggle it on if you'd like to use it. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the closed caption live transcript. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. You can also do the same and choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. If you're new to Brain Club is for everyone. Brain Club's for neurodivergent folks, people who support neurodivergent folks, whether it be family or friends or professionals, people who are exploring their neuroidentity, and really anyone with any type of brain who wants to learn about neuro-inclusive culture. If you're new to All Brains Belong, we are a nonprofit supporting the health and belonging of people with all types of brains, and we do so with several different types of programs. We do medical care, social connection, employment support, and community education. You are invited to be part of the ABB community through your participation in Brain Club. We're really glad you're here. Brain Club is where we demonstrate our approach to neuro-inclusive culture for purposes of shifting broader community awareness of the issues of concern and importance to the neurodivergent community, and hopefully to promote new ways of thinking and being in the world. And that is how culture change happens as you take this forth into your lives. What we do here is we provide education. This is not a place for medical advice or addressing personal medical situations. We have other programs for that. This is to model neuro-inclusive culture and new ways of being in community through community panels, guest speakers, and book chats. It's not a therapeutic space or a support group. It's a way to provide a better way of understanding neurodivergent experiences through presenter stories and a way of understanding big picture community experiences, like in tonight's panel. And in so doing, often you may hear both criticism of systemic structures that make it difficult for people to get needs met, and tonight is about bright spotting alternatives. You are welcome to use the chat as we listen to our panel. And that is my visual support to remind me to open up the chat so I can see it. Hello. If you are going to use the chat, we ask that you limit the chat to the content of the panel so you can share what a panelist says impacts you or validate what other people say. You can ask questions that staff will answer. We just ask if you're going to use the chat, we ask that you use the big box as opposed to replying to individual comments using threads. That makes the chat bounce up and down, which gets distracting and hard for our staff to keep up with. So thank you for using the big box. All right, so there are multiple right ways to participate here. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. We welcome everyone, and if there's anything you need, let us know. This is a space where we really think about the collective community and to protect the space for the collective community. So we invite you to listen, to learn, to observe what a neuro-inclusive space looks like, maybe pick up some new words and concepts. Lizzie's going to put some other resources in the chat, and think about how what you hear connects to your life. If it's your first time at Brain Club, which I think it is for a couple of you, welcome. Keep coming back, and Lizzie's going to put some frequently asked questions in the chat. All right, so first, a big thank you to North Country Federal Credit Union for sponsoring today's Brain Club and as well as Brain Clubs all this month. We are so grateful to North Country as a partner in our programs that you'll hear more about today because one of our panelists is coming to us from North Country. We also thank all of you for your support of Brain Club, for making it possible for us to provide content week after week to model what we think is a really important way of being. Tonight, what this will look like, we have a pre-recorded panel that I'll introduce in just a second. It'll run 34 minutes, and then we'll have some time for discussion. So, as I started to mention before I distracted myself, we've been spending this month looking at transformation from a few different angles. So first we started with our own stories about ourselves. Then last week we looked at what it looks like inside of workplaces. And so tonight we're zooming out another level, talking about transforming communities, what it takes for whole networks and connections between overlapping, colliding networks to be places where we can create something new, something where people can have what they need and what they need to belong. So, before I introduce our panelists, I want to talk a little bit about community-centered design. So we try, so what you're going to hear is like how we do it here. There's, any number of ways of doing about this, but we think it's really important to know what the people we serve need. So we ask, and we ask in multiple different ways, and we compensate people for telling us what they need. There's a concept called community-based participatory research. It's a highly collaborative process where topics of importance is identified by the community, and it's a cyclical and iterative, action-oriented process of just continuously refining based on what you learn. And so it's the idea of the community that one or an organization is serving, who is intimately involved in the ongoing iterative process, which hopefully results in an outcome that actually meets the needs of the people it's trying to serve. And so at All Brains Belong, we ask for feedback a lot. We ask for feedback first when we are doing needs assessments and starting to brainstorm initial solutions. We ask for feedback when we've designed a program draft based on those needs assessments. We tweak it some more, we bring it back for more feedback, and then we do a pilot, we get feedback after that, and then we do a broader rollout. And so last month, you saw this described in terms of how the Brain Club program has evolved over time based on community feedback. But we think it's really important, and in our healthcare practice, we're really intentional about this part, that often what we see is even what's a diplomatic way of saying that? Even when large organizations that have resources ask for feedback, they don't always provide compensation for what they are extracting. And that is not only does that make it so that people who don't have the privilege to be able to volunteer their time, they don't get represented, but it also reinforces a hierarchy and harmful dynamics. And in the healthcare space, I think often there really are very dysfunctional and harmful patient clinician power dynamics. And it really is a missed opportunity for deeper community engagement from the people who are excluded. So it's the idea that valuing all forms of labor and participation, reducing barriers, demonstrating respect and accountability to patients, and hopefully does support further community engagement. What we see is that folks who participate in our focus groups or surveys or interviews, we see them then coming to programs because the programs are useful to them because they've been designed in response to their feedback. And of course, because we all have different brains and different brains have different needs, we provide multiple paths to participation, both synchronously and asynchronously. And so, what this looks like in healthcare, asking things like what gets in the way of accessing care? What is it that's helpful? To reinforce some of the things that you've seen us present in webinars before, of things we learn from our community. And thinking about, again, multiple paths to participation, combinations of menus based on past phases of input, combined with open-ended responses. And we have learned so much, and that has really dramatically shaped the programs that we offer. And so sometimes it is difficult when you're working to do a thing, and sometimes feedback comes up that is surprising or that is not what you were hoping for. And that's part of the process too. So being open to what people share, because what people share is such a gift, even if it's not like what, a pat on the head, like good, perfect job. Like there is no perfect job. And it's the idea of constantly iterating to meet the needs. So tonight, we've invited three people who sit at the intersection of economics, work, and community care, who are each in different ways changing the conditions around them so that people can stay and participate and thrive. So our panelists tonight, Jeff Smith, who's the Vice President of Lending for North Country Federal Credit Union. He works at the heart of community finance, using lending and philanthropy to reduce financial barriers and invest in community health. And in addition to North Country offering full spectrum financial services, they partner with more than 125 nonprofit organizations in Vermont each year, to fund innovative community-centered projects, including our own Boost employment support program, which you've heard about at Brain Club in the past, as well as the lead sponsor for our Community Health and Access Fund. Gwen Pacala Hart is a member of our board of directors. She is a solidarity economist, and founder of Hearts Revival, where she provides financial and strategic awakening for small businesses and the communities they shape. Connie Beal, who you met last week at Brain Club, chair of our board of directors, is also the director of the Working Bridges program of United Way of Northwest Vermont. If you don't know about Working Bridges, we've featured them many times at Brain Club before. It's a really amazing program that partners with employers to remove day-to-day barriers like transportation and childcare and housing so that people can stay in their jobs. They embed resource coordinators at work sites to problem solve and connect employees to basic needs. And so thank you so much to our panelists. And without further ado, I got to reshare because I never remember to turn the sound on. And while we watch this panel, which I mentioned will run 34 minutes, you're welcome to use the chat while you watch.
There's employment stress, there's financial stress, and we're in a space right now where there's real financial stress throughout all of Vermont. And, I did a report for our board and highlighted that over 80% of Americans are feeling some level of financial stress right now. Financial stress is one of those it's less spoken about, and but it impacts your whole life. It impacts your own personal mental health, and then it impacts your ability to show up as your full self at work and in other relationships. And the mission of the credit union is to make people's financial, dreams come true and to do so for all. But I think by understanding that how everybody approaches those dreams are different. So if you're open to being inquisitive and listening, just like you guys were in creating the Boost program, and just like how you came to North Country and we were willing to listen, really good things can happen when you do that.
All these places and these communities that we're part of, and we go in and out of them. And then there's this like global community that we have that we all kind of manage and navigate. But within each of these hubs or these communities we're part of, there are great assets and resources.
I have been on the ABB board for less than a year, and this is an awesome experience. I come from a financial and business strategy background. I've worked in economic development and entrepreneurship development, more specifically, for a long time. And I do think that entrepreneurial thinking weaves within every facet of what I observe here at All Brains Belong. And that really watching that level of innovation, of radical hospitality for all people, that is one of the ways that I see All Brains Belong transforming communities and transforming systems.
We think a lot about like the empowerment piece and the narrative shifting piece. It's the idea of when you recognize that you're not broken and you're not alone, that shift is what makes everything else possible. How does this connect to your work with Working Bridges, like narrative of I'm broken, I'm defective, and the systems thwart me. Like, how do you see that playing out for people?
I mean, I think it's at the very basic root of humanity and being able to be ourselves and ask for help. I think it gets to the very basic principle of I know when I've felt inadequate or not enough that I find it harder to ask for help. I feel I have to, I'm ashamed. I feel this like sense of I'm a burden.
How very different the experience of transforming a community is when there is a way around or out of scarcity. One of the things that I observe in people who are starting businesses is there's a scarcity mindset often that we think we can solve with money, but it's actually a problem with the way that we perceive what's available to us. There aren't enough customers for me. There aren't enough hours in the day for me to do all the stuff. There aren't enough, right? Like that's what's fueling the mindset, and that then stymies innovation and innovative thinking.
I'm not making progress in the way they want me to, or I've not achieved something. And I think to name that and flip it and say, actually, I bring lots of value. There's a lot here that I'm capable of. And if I start with that, it changes my story and it makes it a lot easier for me to ask for the help I need.
As we think about things like this here at North Country, we feel like that being a good community steward allows good things to come to you, problems in the community to present themselves from your partners, and it then gives you the opportunity to kind of react. People, I think at this point in our community, there's a lot of folks who are like, I don't know what to do. They feel that economic situation, just the general political strife that exists, and this level of discourse that's happening, I think people get stuck.
Yeah, and I think that, that stuckness, I think when there is so much chaos in the world and we get dysregulated, like that stuckness can be a dysregulation response. And when
Yep.
we think about how we really are we're in a place of, I heard on a podcast the term permacrisis. Like this is not just going to get better. And so what do? You can't just freeze. You have to do something.
It's difficult to see a system not support the people who got into the system to take care of people. Going to my primary doctor for something that needs to be fixed often left my appointments feeling like I have work to do and that I'm somehow not meeting expectations, or that I'm not enough, or that I'm unwell. Something is wrong with me.
In the last couple of years, I got really interested in prosperity economics, essentially not just looking at the GDP, right? Like what do people produce, but like how do people feel about it? Looking at different ways that communities across the world are building abundance without ever touching money is really interesting. And so I got exposed to the Post Growth Institute, which their kind of signature program, post growth, in other words, that we live within an economic and planetary system that has boundaries. And what would it look like if we lived within those boundaries happily and usefully whole? And one of the post growth signature programs is this needs and offers market. And I went through a training and was telling Mel about it. I don't even know how we got to it, but Mel said, why don't you try it here? And it's following this whole idea of like solidarity economics. In other words, how do we meet our needs outside of a traditional transactional system? Essentially, a needs and offers market, if we're going to describe it, it's you get together, you do some grounding together as the community, and then you have a shared spreadsheet and you just type in what are some things that I need. And then we talk about what are some things I can offer. And it's anything from, well, in our community, it was everything from like feminist economic theory discussion to I really need someone to help me get my thesis done. And watching the discussion amongst other people who think and operate in the world like our peers, it was really cool to watch solutions come up.
We heard from people that they were reluctant to participate in something like this because they didn't think they had anything to offer. And I think what we saw, if you're getting messages that your value comes from what you produce, you don't know what else there is. And so the idea of showing up, seeing what people need, and saying, "Oh, that's actually a thing I know about," or "That's actually something I'm happy to like sit by your side as you fill out that paper." It's just like, truly, this is actually like something I'm really good at. Recognizing that their gifts are valued by other people,
Yeah.
especially having received the messages that like, oh, your little hobby or your this or that, is just like
Big
not
time.
important or not significant because it doesn't earn money or whatever. It's just like, no, actually, this is quite helpful to your community. You are valued and appreciated just by being in the community.
And I think that you just triggered something else for me, which was how you build time, how All Brains Belong builds intentional time and reflection and um, germination time into processes and experiences. And with the needs and offers market, a lot of times it's just like it's the 2 hours or 3 hours that it happens, and that's it, and you're done, and like no follow up. Like you're on your own for follow up. And one of the ways that I also think it's cool to watch how you're building abundance and transforming the community is you're intentionally matchmaking and taking time to appreciate each need and each offer.
The first program you supported is the Community Health and Access Fund. So that provides medicines and healthcare appointments and supplies. I mean, it makes a huge difference. That it's been running 6 months now. And
Outstanding.
what we're seeing is that not only are people getting the tangible things that they need, but they're feeling like they belong to a community of people who care about them. And that's huge. And what we have seen, and I'm working on data about this now, but what we've been observing is that people who have not been engaged with other community programs here, like they don't come to Brain Club and they don't come to employment support programs, they don't come to groups, they're starting to by needing something and having the Community Health and Access Fund provide it. And it's not All Brains Belong providing like a charitable thing. It's the community supported by the broader community and individuals and businesses who care about you. And now they're coming and participating in programs, which is, I didn't expect that. And that's been really amazing.
It's like it's being cared for, being respected, being trusted.
There's often this mistrust, right? This mistrust, and that's one of the inspirations for this panel was that I think that especially nowadays, I think there's just mistrust of institutions, and I think that Vermonters are looking to know about what organizations can they trust, and so I wanted to be sharing these stories to be illustrating trustworthy organizations. But I wonder, do you as an organization think about people who aren't really engaging with your resources because of any number of barriers? Like, what do you think about that?
100%. So I'll give you two examples of that. One, we partnered with Champlain College. We brought a former Winooski High School student in an internship, and he's spent an entire year with us, and he now is a full-time employee of ours. His family is Nepali, and he came to us, and we had this great conversation over the course of time where he and I built trust. And so what we were trying to understand was what are some of the things that we're doing, these programs we've created, the Indie accounts, the Pathways accounts, and also our halal small dollar loans, and soon to be our Sharia compliant mortgage program we're going to operate. He and I talked about it, and he goes, "What do you think this is?" And I said, "I think it's trust-based banking."
Yeah.
And if you really think about what, his project became how to create trust-based banking in our community. And I think that sort of when we think about supporting marginalized populations, I might not have all the answers, but I can engage people and say, "Well, how can we support you better?" Because if I create something to support them, it's going to miss the mark. But if I work with people to create that solution, great things can come. We've been working with the Islamic Society of Vermont for going on 18 months, and I hope in the next 4 to 6 weeks that we'll be able to launch this Sharia compliant mortgage product with a nationwide partner. But it's been something with which that that they have been focused towards and invited us into community prayer, and then after to listen and learn. And when you do so, you create solutions that work for them and not just for us.
Knowing how we've worked before in partnership, a partner like North Country, they seek to show up and like meet people where they are and be able to include many voices in the design, which then makes sure the strategy really creates the impact we're looking for and the health outcomes we want, right? It really helps people feel included and seen and visible, right? That they're part of something bigger than themselves. And that's the definition of belonging.
That is really philosophically aligned with how we plan all our programs at All Brains Belong. Even like, so, there's community partnerships, and even within our community, the people that we're serving as, a direct service provider, like we have all of these focus groups where we compensate people to come and tell us what they need. And then we plan our programs around that. So for example, the program that North Country is supporting, Boost, that came from patients, that came from focus groups of patients saying, we're either there's two groups of people here. There's people who are employed, but they are having difficulty keeping their job. They are struggling and slogging through and feeling like their health is suffering because their work situation is not working for them. And then there's another group of people who they want to be working, but they can't. They haven't been able to acquire accessible employment, and they don't know what to do. And they're, a lot of folks we care for are chronically ill. They're homebound. They like can't go and, commute to a 9 to 5 job. That's not happening for them with their chronic health conditions. So what Boost is doing is helping people learn about their employment-related access needs, arrive at appropriate accommodations. We help people start their own businesses, and that's huge, because I think the relationship between employment and health is, it's a known thing, but to see this on the ground of like when you help people recognize that they can share their gifts with the community and you provide them a way of doing that, I mean, it's got huge impact on their health.
Yeah, I mean, and I also think that when you're inquisitive and willing to listen, you identify issues that you didn't know were there, and then you also open yourself up to partner with people that you wouldn't normally say. People might not normally say, like, how would North Country and All Brains Belong work together?
It's such an interesting community within a community that, really it was designed by the community, and it meets a need that now I'm seeing as much more expansively. Like I'm at my awareness about our current medical system and health access needs it's so massive, but to see success at this level and to see what community can do for each other is something I think is rich and is really worth shining a light on and making sure we have. It feels really vital, especially as things are topsy-turvy and changing and stressful and we're worried about costs. This feels really effective and dynamic and responsive, inclusive. I think it's a really safe way to take care of people.
I do think that the way that All Brains Belong approaches community experience, is illuminating. There's always someone who's paying attention to the chat. And so if you're a written person, you're going to be supported there. If you are a listening person, if you're a cameras off person, like I've noticed that All Brains Belong provides enough support people so that there is the room for intentional connection.
Totally. And like a lot of the people who participate, not just in this program, but really any of our programs, have often had the experience of like just feeling really unsafe in community. And just they've had really bad experiences and feeling, othered and left out and, all of that. And so a lot of times people show up like expecting it to be bad. And then they're like, oh, huh, that's so interesting. This was different than I expected.
With the needs and offers, we changed the name. We don't call it a needs and offers market. I think we just call it an experience. We got market out of there because we saw some friction with some clients who were kind of like, wait, this still feels really transactional.
Small things about language, really matter, and it just becomes kind of using language with which that connects with them means it becomes respect. And when people feel respected, they feel trust.
Think about, intergenerationally, a lot of the people we serve have grown up such that they didn't learn about money, and they feel a lot of shame around money and a lot of shame around, difficulty managing money. And so they just like there's just this wall, like I can't go there, I can't do this. And so there's also the accessibility of resources and information. One of the things that was really impressive was the graphic that outlined the roadmap to onboarding with the
Pathway, the
program.
pathways.
Most organizations don't have accessible information about their programs. Even if they have a resource, people can't access it. They're like, oh, that's not for me because I can't understand that.
We don't often see ourselves when we're in a specific situation that we're actually in, because we don't want to be in that situation. So that program also was conversations with both the United Way of Northwest Vermont and the Green Mountain United Way. We were talking about an alternative checking account, and we had a kind of a design for it, and they were like, but that's not what people really want and need. They need a pathway. And I was like, boom, it was the light bulb went on, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. And we were presented with the opportunity by one of our community partners, the Green Mountain United Way, and said, young people in foster care that don't have guardians willing to sign for them with a bank account can open a bank account. And so as we think about those things, it was like, what's the ask? And the ask was, can you do this? And there are times when you just have to say yes and figure out the details later. And we didn't completely do that. We said, well, we think so. And we worked with compliance and said, yeah, we can. But you just have to walk into every situation knowing the risks and understanding them and finding ways to mitigate them so you can protect the organization as well as the people you're trying to serve.
And I think about the ways that, like Kid Connect, like that's a great example of transforming community. Are you kidding me? Like,
Time out, you need to hear this.
okay.
So, and like maybe this won't, I mean, I'll leave, maybe it stays in, maybe it doesn't, but we matched these Sweet Little Loves in 2022, in June 2022, when the program first opened. And so they were like in our first cohort of making matches. They were 10, and they were each other's first friend. And they've been meeting weekly since that time. And then 2 weeks ago, one of the kids who lives in California, the other lives in Vermont, one of the kids and their family flew out to Vermont and they met their Kid Connections match for the first time. And I was there when it happened.
Are you kidding
It
me?
was magical. And so one of the things at our birthday party yesterday, I'll send you the video, is magical. There's a video clip, like a 10-second clip of this kid who's now 13 talking about flying across the country and meeting his Kid Connections match and like why this mattered to him. It's magical.
No, and like that, that is transformative. Like, it, I
Yeah.
have no words for that. I mean, like
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised, and yet I'm astounded.
For us, it's about empowerment becomes when you're ready to begin this journey, we're here to support you and lift you up and help you in that path and not cure you. We're going to support you. And one of the things that that I think has created a lot of support within our organization is partnering with local high schools and bringing financial reality fairs to those places and giving young people a chance to have real life financial situations to consider and make a bad financial choice. It's a safe space, and they come back and say, wow, I ran out of my budget. I can't actually do all those things. I'm going to come back. And then when people come back, they're open for a conversation. It's like, it's okay. This is a safe place to learn. We're planning one with the King Street Youth Center has a great new program called the Academic Career Exploration Program. And it's about bringing young people, along as high schoolers in a journey to help them understand what's out there in the world, create connections for them in the world. And so we're going to, in April of 2026, we're going to do a financial reality fair at King Street for all the ACE program participants of the BIPOC community and many new Americans. So
We can all be in pursuit of what we know is good for us, and we can make decisions about where we want to be and where we don't want to be. Um, we probably all have times and stories where we could say that wasn't good for me, or what this and this has helped me get over here and where I want to be. And maybe some of that feels kind of normal, like we're gonna have to figure out what's good for us and where we want to go. Where do we bring our gifts and our assets and the way we work, where does that shine? And then once we're there, once you're in a place where that's where you shine, if only the thing. And that's where I think you're right. Like a lot of times I think it will come from leadership, like from how the organization itself is doing. Like so really it almost isn't about the individual so much, because if the organizational culture is one where certain things are accepted and it's just the norms, it's really hard. You're not going to change that person by person. You need the team or those individuals to be well supported in a very clear, this is how we want to work. Like, what's the shared vision, And if that shared vision doesn't align with how we show up in our workplace, well, it's that's a really hard, it's going to be hard it'll be like a fight, right? And a fight for safety. And that seems impossible to sustain, right? You can't can't fight for your own safety and do the work.
One of the other things that I've been really impressed with is North Country's investment in learning about neurodiversity and neuroinclusive employment, being part of a larger group of organizations doing this work. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what that's been like for you.
For us, our culture is one of the things that we think is pretty special here at North Country, and nurturing that culture is super important. And so that really requires that we understand more about the folks with which that we work with. Having a staff of over 200 people, you're going to have, people from all walks of life and all spectrums, and finding ways with which to let them know that they're supported in some way, shape, or form is super important, because when you think about psychological safety and emotional intelligence, those are things with which that are key drivers to culture, and they're also key drivers to success. And if we allow our staff to feel safe and successful, we're going to benefit, which in turn means that the members are going to benefit and our community is going to benefit.
The employer clients of Working Bridges, do you think that they recognize that workplace is part of someone's community? Is that
I think
a commonly held belief?
I think some do. Yeah, I do think some workplaces really, and in fact, some are really tuned in to work being a community within a community. Others maybe don't. I think it kind of runs the gamut. I think there are a lot of, and it may come down to size, ownership, different variables. And I don't know that I can succinctly say, oh, it's these variables that mean they care about community or that they recognize the inherent power of community building within their company. I do think there are some individuals, just because of who they are and how they think of the world, that just follows them naturally.
Sure.
I think it could depend on many factors, but when I see it working well, there are some things I could check off that I think that I do think impact employee well-being, or that overall stability of an employee. But it's like taking social determinants of health, but sort of boiling it down to the conditions of a workplace. Around that is the ecological model, right? This idea of the environment around the company, right? And then within the company, there are certain resources, benefits, and tools and experiences within there. And how are we measuring both like the conditions in the community that impact health outcomes, but also these communities that have assets and resources to bear internally? It's like two levels of impact, you know?
I love this. I love thinking about this. And I would also imagine just as an individual having their needs met and shifting their narrative allows them to do better work and live a life that is theirs to live. I would imagine that from the employer's perspective, having a group of employees who feel that way is
Yes.
going to also allow the company to do well.
And then I think, I mean, social determinants of health will ask like things like access to healthcare, and we'll say like, you know, yeah, you're better off if you have access to healthcare. But it doesn't really give a descriptor there, like access to effective and meaningful healthcare in a community where you belong. It's there's more to it, right? Because it's like access to healthcare is really like the tip of the iceberg.
Totally. And
Um,
because we're also thinking about like the meta aspect. You're taking care of individuals and taking care of
yeah.
communities, a community that you as an individual belong to, and then that allows you that the transformation that happens because of that allows you to actually contribute to your community.
What's the
Yes.
impact of participating in knowing all brains belong in my life? I feel like I am more connected. I feel like I have some health outcomes I could report and say I'm actually feeling more healthy because I'm more informed. I understand what my health needs are in a whole different way.
Somebody from Boost, cohort of there's 6 people. Amongst that group, one of them was starting a business to consult and grant write or
Great.
for businesses. One of the people in Boost hired the grant writer to write a grant to make her services accessible to other people in the community who needed them but couldn't afford them. But meanwhile, another member of the Boost cohort who we helped start an OT private practice, she's now the OT for the child of the first person in Boost. Like, ah!
I mean, it's almost like a bit of a circular effect, right? Because and that's what makes it kind of this like more sustainable model really is that community's looking after community, which means if community values this and needs this, then we support it. Um, we show up because it's part of us.
It's really I think that has become a really important focus for us is our culture and making sure that people within our organization feel supported no matter where they are and who they are.
Absolutely. And I think that in many places, the culture is not there. Like the culture of safety at the foundation of the pyramid has to be there. And when that's not there, I think organizations struggle to create conditions under which their employees can do their best work. And of course, the downstream implications of that. Do you have any examples of things that North Country does to cue psychological safety for employees, just like as a something to model for other employers who are like trying to create good working conditions?
Yeah, so we partnered with New Wave Equity Corporation over the last 3 or 4 years to do some surveys to learn about our culture. From that has come out we have an employee resource group that has a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's understanding what your employees need and want, and in those we find information through those culture surveys that we do with New Wave um, and it really, I think, helps inform you of do people feel safe and what are they looking for? And so if we have this group our employee resource group is one that provides feedback to us on a pretty regular basis and has been one that has helped push us to you guys for the training, that you provided to our organization. So I think it's being open to taking feedback from staff about what they would like to see and what they would like to have us be working towards.
It sounds like the structure and the routines and like the infrastructure that you have with internally very aligned with exactly what you described is your external community relations, that you're taking feedback from the people you're serving internally or externally, and finding out what they need and designing programs accordingly. I love that.
Providing that holistic, meeting everybody where they're at is a key part of this conversation around transforming communities. You can't transform the community, A, if you don't know where they are, and B, if they don't want to interact with you. And that's
Yeah,
not been
or
my
they
experience.
are unable to interact with you because when the things move too fast or they're only offered in a one size fits all way, like people might want to interact with you, but they just can't.
I think that the way that the needs on offers markets have happened at All Brains Belong have been like the quintessential, oh my God, there's abundance in our community, there's abundance in life that I just had to say something about it, and my needs were met in ways that I wasn't expecting. Anytime I get to spend time in the room with the whole crew at ABB, I like leave inspired and hopeful in a way that I don't expect. It's awesome.
I wonder, do you have any advice for organizational leaders who don't have, the culture yet in place that allows these downstream successes that North Country is having?
Yeah, I would just encourage them to be just to be vulnerable and to be vulnerable and bold, to be willing to have internal conversations with leaders and their boards to say what do we want to where do we see ourselves. I think people get stuck and they don't know what to do. So what's that one thing that you can do? What's that one step forward that you can take as an individual within your organization, within your board, that can be that next good step? And if you take that one step, create that one collision, a bigger collision can happen and really good things can occur.
I loved that panel so much. Yeah, I agree. What an amazing thing to end on. Thank you so much to Jeff Smith from North Country Federal Credit Union, Connie Beal from Working Bridges Program at United Way of Northwest Vermont, and Gwen Hart from Hearts Revival. Thank you so much to our panelists. I know we're a bit over time, but we could probably hear from a couple people who want to share anything that you're taking away from this panel. What has stood out to you?
Now, how did you make the offers and exchanges market become sustainable where
Michelle,
people didn't?
I answered that question
Oh,
in
you
the
did?
chat, just
You
with a
did?
suggestion
Okay.
of you got to find out about the access needs of the participants. Because one size fits all does not work for all, and we definitely found that using like a generic protocol that wasn't centered around our participants' needs was left people out. And so we did it very differently the next time around. We've only done it twice. Thanks. Anybody else takeaway points? Paul, I saw you turn your video on. You're going to say something?
Well, I was thinking about Gwen's comment just about basically kind of working within the boundaries, I guess, of sustainability of what we can do. And, just something that I think about a lot. And it's just tough because society is always, that is not the motto of society, is to push further and find out what the complications are later and then push further. But yeah, I echo just some of the other comments going along in the conversation, just of how it's nice that the community has come together in different ways and we're working to make something sustainable here.
Right. It's like the reimagining of healthcare and community and an economic structure where people can get their needs met through connections with one another. And I think that that's the whole that's the point. And that community care aspect, like without that, it's very hard to even have parallel play with a traditional economic structure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of our community. And we will, oh, thanks, Lizzie. If you're not yet registered for next week's Brain Club, we'll be wrapping up our series on transformation with transforming systems. We'll be revisiting a conversation with Dr. Winnie Luby. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.